I have a Glock. I've had it for quite some time.
Hey guys, Kamala Harris has a gun and she's not afraid to use it.
Ever fired it?
Yes. Of course I have.
Here comes that creepy laugh again.
It is not right that teachers and nurses are paying a higher tax rate than billionaires and
Your economic plan would add $3 trillion. How are you going to pay for it?
Well, one of the things is I'm going to make sure.
The Kamala campaign is in serious trouble. If you look at the polling over the last week, the numbers don't look good for Kamala Harris. Kamala's campaign initially looked quite clever. Ride the enthusiasm wave, whilst continuing to do selected interviews with softball questions. Keep her away from the media as much as possible was the angle.
This is a $500 a plate dinner. Good night.
Oh, 500. Oh, okay. All right, no problem. Here, put us down for 4, in case we want seconds. We got no food. We got no jobs. Our pets' heads are falling off.
It was a direct contrast to the Trump campaign, which has been to go on every single podcast that could potentially be favorable for him. Keeping Kamala out of the limelight and in the shadows hasn't really been seen to pay dividends because now her numbers are starting to tank. So essentially, her campaign has decided to switch gears and put her out in front of as much media as possible. You know, going on the Call Me Daddy, Call Me Daddy, Call Her Daddy?
You have to call me Nighthawk.
Call Her Daddy podcast to get some support with some specific issues around women voters. Now that she's actually got an interview where someone's actually asking some tough questions, you can see she crumbles under the pressure. One of the most damning blows has been this new 60 Minutes interview. It's one of the worst performances that she's given, and that's taking into account that 60 Minutes actually edited this video to make it even look better. We're going to watch the interview today and react and see how well does she do in a less unscripted performance next year. These different wars around the world and these ongoing conflicts. And I think the Kamala's campaign has been to seriously focus on trying to toe the line between picking Israel or the Palestinian plight. More woke left are going to be anti-Israel. It's interesting because she's trying to contend with the new left, which has completely changed over time, whilst towing the line of the relationship with Israel. So I can see why the campaign messages are pretty measured when it comes to this topic. But more importantly, we should be focusing on what's going to happen in America, given that there's so many different difficulties right now with immigration, and the economist said her plan will add $3 trillion in debt over 10 years, but her economists say that her plan is better than Trump's. Okay, well, that sounds fair and unbiased. Okay, so I think this is the concept of putting tax on unrealized capital gains. I'm not an economist, but I don't know how that will potentially help. I understand the concept of trying to tax the rich more, but then usually that flows on the effect that the everyday person ends up paying more tax. If they can circumvent the rules or push the amount of debt or other tax on other people, then the money's going to come from somewhere. Wow, that was probably the most direct question she's been asked this entire campaign. We're dealing with the real world. How's that going to happen, Kamala? So they're people that know there's people in those jobs are working hard. Got it. So they know they want to change it, but then why did they never change it before when you've already been in power for the last few years? I don't understand why you didn't change it.
You know that? I'm also a capitalist. And I know the limitations of government.
Wow, she's a capitalist. They've been hiding away this entire election campaign because when she starts to speak unfiltered, she just doesn't look that great. She looks quite confusing, and the feeling I get from watching her is she gives off this appearance of being a politician or the HR lady that's been working there forever that's just really a snake in the dark. That's the feeling I generally get. But this is why she's doing this sort of campaigning now, because her poll numbers are tanking, and it's like, okay, let's show our full personality, and hopefully we find it incredibly interesting that it's about compromising on everything except the values, but to essentially just go back on everything that you said years ago just because, oh, look, the public pressure might be there. All the environmental values about fracking I want to change. All the values I have around undocumented or illegal immigrants have changed. All the concepts you have about these things that are deep-seated values have completely changed. And why is that? Because of a consensus of pressure? But then you're just copying the other side's values and saying that they're the consensus because they're popular. And this is the thing, when you're blowing in the wind but changing your directions, then people aren't going to have a certainty around what you really believe. What are your real values?
You recently visited the southern border and embraced President Biden.
The fact that there's been a ridiculous surge of illegal migrants coming into the country, and then say, oh, it's because of buildings. What the solution? Just to let everyone in and then try to work out what happens next? Geez, that's a tough answer, Kamala.
Asking was
You cut it in half, but you still don't answer the question why you didn't do it 3 years ago. It had to be done just before the election happened. Finally, that the border was being a little bit more controlled. Gun? What do you mean you're in law enforcement? You want to have a gun like police officers? Very interesting question, actually, because you can see Trump has kind of steered away from these sort of intense interviews, rather going for the podcasting route. And it seems to be successful so far.
If he is not,
Some grievances, but with Kamala Harris, this whole interview has just been about skating around questions rather than answering anything directly. So you, the person, don't really know her or understand anything else about her.
Was democracy best served by President Biden stepping down and basically handing you a nomination? You didn't have to go through a primary process. You didn't have to fight off other contenders. That's not really the way our system was intended to work.
President Biden made a decision that I think history is going to show is rare among leaders, which was to put country before self.
The decision was made by the party in the last moment rather than leaving it to an actual primary, because suddenly Joe Biden, after the debate, gets really sick and we have to put in a new person now.
And I am proud to have earned the support of the vast majority of delegates and to have been elected the Democratic nominee. Look, I've been in this race for 70 days. It is without any question.
70 days, wow, that's a long time. She's really gained the trust of the people, and now it's panic mode, hence all these different interviews and podcasts, because things aren't going well. Imagine she began at the beginning of the campaign when Biden should have originally dropped out. Then it would have been a lot more of a fair process, because if I recall correctly, she came last. Out of all the other different people on the stage, she polled last. This situation completely benefited her.
Let's hit on some foreign policy. Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran.
So if you
And
have
that must
proof
be.
that Iran is building a nuclear weapon, would you take military action?
I'm not going to talk about hypotheticals at this moment.
I'm going to answer any questions.
What about China?
China, first of all, we must win the competition for the 21st century with China. We should not seek conflict.
So say if
What
China
we-
attacks Taiwan, would we use military force to
Let me guess. No comment.
support?
No hypotheticals.
Taiwan?
Bill, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals, but listen, we need to make sure that we maintain a one China policy, but that includes supporting Taiwan's ability to defend itself.
A one China policy or a two nation support? This is one of these classic political speaks where it's like one China policy, except that we're going to support Taiwan. And I'm not going to give you an answer. It's going to be a hypothetical about what could possibly happen if there is some sort of conflict there.
Including what we need to do to ensure the freedom of the Taiwan Strait. We need to make sure we have open lines of communication with China, in particular, military to military.
One of the things I found out after this interview was that they actually did an incredible amount of editing. But let's see all the extra word salad is added into it.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Jeez, you can see one version was a complete word salad where even I didn't know what was going on, and the other one seemed strong, confident, and confirmed. This interview is a complete disaster, and even with the additional editing. So what did we learn? Well, the general public can finally see at a bigger lens who is Kamala Harris, keeping her away in the political shadows, only doing selected sound bites. Now this is a chance to ask her tough questions, and unfortunately for her, the answers are very vague. And this is after all this editing and word salad cut out. It still is just classic political speak. So it's going to be incredibly tough for her the more and more she looks like a politician. With her approach of going on podcasts now and getting herself out there with more friendlier journalism would probably be a good stretch for her. But we have to wait and see if it's going to pay off for her. If you'd like to check out my video, are the Haitians eating cats and dogs? Is it true? Is it false? Well, I cover all the facts right here. I break down every single source and I tell you if it's happening or it's not happening. And we'll see you next time.